All right, welcome back. So now we're going to look quickly at a few different uses of comparatives, mostly, but also equalatives. The first point is if the context makes the comparison clear, we don't have to add the endings to equalatives and comparatives. Up to now, we've been talking about all of these forms as though you're going to use them on their own. But this doesn't happen. We use these forms when we're having conversations. And in English, we try to shorten our sentences and not repeat a lot of extra information. This makes communicating very quick, and it makes it faster. So I've given you an example conversation to show you how we might use this in a dialogue. So for example, person A says, "Did you study for the test?" And person B says, "Oh yeah, Kathy and I studied for 3 hours." And person A says, "Well, I studied just as hard." As hard as who or what? See, here we have our verb and we have the first part of our equalative, but we're missing the rest. Now, when you were listening to me, did you understand what I meant? Probably, because person B just said that the two of them studied for 3 hours. So in this conversation, it's very clear that A is comparing studying with B. We could say, "I studied just as hard as both of you." But we don't need to. It's extra information. Okay, so A says, "Well, I studied just as hard, but Sarah studied harder." Okay, and again, we have our comparative, we have our verb, but we're missing the ending. Who did Sarah study harder than? Probably all of them. Because if A studied as hard as B, and Sarah studied harder, she studied harder than these 3 people. So in a conversation, we wouldn't use the full form. We would use this shortened form. Okay. The next use for comparatives is to show something increasing or decreasing. And like our comparative adjectives, we use the form comparative adverb plus and plus comparative adverb. So we repeat the comparative. If it's a long adverb, we just repeat more and more, or less and less. So for example, the Michigan test is probably coming soon. So I started studying harder and harder. Yesterday, I studied for 2 hours. Today, I will study for 3 hours. Tomorrow, I will study for 4 hours. Maybe on the weekend, I'll study for 12 hours. It's a lot of studying, but it shows that it's getting more and more. I'm studying harder and harder. So we've repeated the comparative here. Okay. And the last form, which we're also familiar with from adjectives, is to show cause and effect. To show that one thing causes another thing. And we use the form the plus comparative adverb, not adjective, plus comma. We use a comma. Then we have the plus comparative adverb. So, for example, the plus harder is our adverb. The harder I study. And here we've got our comma. The better I do. So if I study more, if I study harder, I will get a better score. And the last point that we're going to talk about today is we can sometimes mix our adverbs and our adjectives in this cause and effect form. For example, the older he is, the more skillfully he plays. Think about professional athletes. In their first year playing the sport, they're not always the best. They have a good year, but maybe the second year they do better. And the third year they do better again. So with age, as they grow, as they get experience, they are able to play better. So here, the older, not an adverb, but here it is an adjective, because it describes he, the older he is. Again, comma, the more skillfully, here it's our comparative adverb form, the more skillfully he plays. Our action verb. So these are the different uses that we can use comparative adverbs and equalative adverbs. I hope you've learned a lot, and I'll see you next time.